the McMillan Lectures inspire us to think in new ways. They can inspire us to consider the possibilities that we hadn't thought of before. This year's lecture lives up to that tradition. Terry Nordstrom is an emeritus professor in the Department of Physical Therapy at Samuel Merritt University in Oakland, California, where he has served as a faculty member, as the Director of Clinical Education, Department Chair, Assistant Academic Vice President, and Vice President of Enrollment and Student Services. During his 24 years of clinical and leadership experience, his research and writing focuses on professional education, professional formation in ethics, and academic leadership development. He received his bachelor's degree from the University of California, Santa Cruz, his master's degree in physical therapy from Stanford University, and his EDD from the University of San Francisco. His APTA recognitions include being the first vice president and second president of the American Council of Academic Physical Therapy. He currently serves as the finance officer for the California Physical Therapy Association. Terry has served on many APTA committees and task forces, including the Ethics and Judicial Committee. He was a member of the Fellowship in Higher Education Leadership from 2017 to 2023, and has been a mentor in the grant writing and education research program since its inception in 2018. He's a Catherine Worthingham Fellow of APTA and a Senior Fellow and Retired Scholar of the National Academy of Practice. And he was the APTA Academy of Education Polly Sarasoli Lecturer in 2019. On a personal note, since very early in my career, I've admired Terry's efforts in educational scholarship and his leadership in APTA, and personally benefited from his wisdom and counsel in my own career development. Our profession and the APTA has been profoundly touched by Terry's wisdom and willingness to relentlessly push us with a gentle and calm demeanor that's uniquely him. In his lecture, The Heart of Movement, What's Love Got to Do with It?, he will explore how physical therapy can create a unified purpose that drives collective action and the broader community and societal levels. Please join me in welcoming Terry Nordstrom.
Thank you. Good evening. I sincerely thank each one of you for being here this evening. I'm giving my heartfelt congratulations to all the new specialists who are recognized tonight. Thank you for putting in the time and effort to excel in our profession. Are you humming a little Tina Turner? I loved her in that song with its catchy title. Ike and Tina Turner was the first live concert I went to as a junior in high school in 1970. On May 2nd, 2024, I was just pulling into the parking lot at the physical therapy clinic where my wife had an appointment with her physical therapist, one of our Samuel Merritt University alums, when my phone rang. It was Roger Herr, and luckily I was parked when he told me the APTA board selected me to be the Mary McMillan lecturer because I was gobsmacked. As it sunk in over the next week, I went to dread. One of my sons asked me what the McMillan was about, and I said something like, it's the highest honor the APTA gives, and I need to come up with a speech that will inspire the physical therapy profession for the future. That was a mistake. I should have said, it's no big deal. I'm just having a conversation with a few of my friends. And that's what I'm doing tonight. Talking to a few of my closest friends. We may not know each other, but we are connected by 2, maybe 3 degrees of separation. Since I'm talking about matters of the heart, I want to acknowledge some of the people who influenced my perspective about what matters. What's love got to do with it? These are the threads that are woven into the garment of my story and this lecture. In 1975, in 1975, as a 22-year-old, I was admitted off the wait list to the physical therapy program at Stanford University, having grown up in a small farming community in Central Valley of California. I had never set foot in a physical therapy clinic, and was the dad of a 5-year-old who lived with his mother after our teenage marriage didn't work out. I include those bits of personal background because, oh no, wait, I'm hitting the wrong button. The reason I'm including those bits of personal background because the reason I am standing here is because of the support of our parents, her mom and my mom, who is here, my dad, who is here in spirit, and my grandparents, to finish high school and college. Among the gazillion lessons I learned from them is resilience and persistence, to not let life's unexpected twists and turns stop you, and the importance of unconditional love. I also learned humility because I saw the privileges we were afforded as white teenage parents with parents who advocated for us with a high school that didn't think a teenage mother belonged there. Other teenage parents in my hometown weren't so fortunate. It's how I learned what love's got to do with it. Stanford's physical therapy program was a special place that wove through my entire career and life. Gay Raymond was one of the 2 faculty members who interviewed me, advocated for my admission, and connected me with my first job out of school at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. It was there at the ripe age of 24 I realized how the kids' social lives and environment affected their development and movement. Helen Blood was the program's chair and Kay Shepard was my research advisor. From them, I learned to appreciate the importance of patients and families in communities and my first insights into what leadership and teamwork meant. Helen connected me with Peter Edgelow because she knew Peter and I would make a great team at his practice in Hayward. Peter was one of the most humane, skillful physical therapists in the universe. He was not only an influential mentor, but he was also my best friend. Peter taught me the importance of truly understanding the patient's story and how to empower them, patients, to be their own best therapist. Gail Jensen was a year behind me at Stanford. 33 years later, she called to ask if I would be part of a research team to look at excellence in physical therapist education with her, Lori Hack, Elizabeth Mostrom, and Jen Guire. I jumped at the chance. It was the most rewarding part of my 46-year career in physical therapy, not only because we knew we were pushing the profession forward, but also because it was so much darn fun, and you can never have too much fun. It was Marty Jewell and Patty Evans, who I also met because of Stanford, who brought me to Samuel Merritt University. Towards the end of my career at the university, I became the vice president of enrollment and student services. It was there I saw firsthand the disproportionate impacts social factors have on students from disadvantaged backgrounds from the student's perspective, not my perspective as a physical therapy faculty member. Patty connected me with Cindy Moore after the end of my second marriage, and Cindy and I married in 2004. Cindy joined the faculty at Stanford when I was a second-year student. She was a consummate physical therapist educator, but mostly a spiritual force to be reckoned with. It was from Cindy I learned to be grounded in what I believe in, the power of letting go, expectations, and judgment, and that you have all the time you need. We lost Cindy to ovarian cancer in 2011. And I met my wife, Deirdre, and no, wait, what happened? There we go. Sorry, I practiced this morning. The guys up there are killing me. I met Deirdre in 2013. They're getting worried. She was a primary care physician for 40 years. Dr. Stegman, who was a medical student at Stanford when I was a PT student there, is the consummate primary care physician who connects deeply and personally across generations of her patients and is an excellent clinician. I marvel at the appreciation she receives for her patients from both. She taught me what primary care really means, but more importantly, never to give up on love. It can arrive in unexpected ways. Thank you to the APTA Board of Directors for your confidence in my ability to follow in the footsteps of 55 other truly remarkable physical therapists. A ginormous thank you to the team that came together to nominate me. Gail Jensen and Lori Hack, who took the lead, Elizabeth Mostrom, Cheryl Resnick, Nicole Christensen, Kim Vernado, Lisa Van Hoos, Dolly Swisher, and Diane Jetty. Our friendship, our lives are woven together in so many ways. I am blessed to have you in my life, and we are blessed to have you in our profession. Thank you to my family, who mean everything to me. Martin Luther King said it this way: "We are tied together in the single garment of destiny, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. And whatever affects one affects all indirectly. For some strange reason, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. And you can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be." Tina's song is in the title for a different reason than I happen to be a fan. Ruth Portillo, one of the people whose shoulders I am standing on tonight, and who gave the McMillan lecture in 2000, is why that song is in the title. She dropped the line, "I wonder what love's got to do with it," during an online webinar about teaching and learning for the common good during the peak of the pandemic. Her musings stopped me in my tracks. I thought about that. What does love got to do with it? With our responsibilities to each other, our patients, our communities. Then, a few months later, I noticed that Bell Hook's book, All About Love, New Visions, was on the bestseller list in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I thought, I wonder why that book is selling so well right now, because I knew she died in 2021, and her book was about 20 years old. I figured the stars were aligned, and I had to read her book. It is no accident that this book rose to prominence then, because Bell Hooks wrote about love as a guiding force for action in all facets of our life, including work. Our work, our profession's purpose is about movement. If we think about every breath as movement, every heartbeat as movement, then life literally does not exist without movement. I suppose life can exist without love, but it would be a bleak existence. But still, you might be asking, what's love got to do with it? Bell Hooks wrote, "The choice of love is a choice to connect." She defined love as actions that openly and honestly express care, affection, responsibility, commitment, and trust. There is clearly a connection between those ingredients and our work in physical therapy. Humans are social beings, and movement is central to our humanity. Movement is an ecological phenomenon, meaning it is both how we interact with people and the environment and how they interact with us. Think of when you hug someone you love and they hug you back. Think of when you cuddle with your dog or cat and they give you a big lick on the face or on your hand. Think of when you dive into the waves at the ocean and when the waves wash you back ashore. Think of epigenetics and the factors that turn genes off and on. Think of the causes of chronic stress load and its effect on immune function, inflammation, and blood pressure. Movement is not purely biomechanical, kinesiological, or physiological. It is an expression of self in an ecological system. The heart of movement is in our humanity. People come to us for expertise when their ability to move has been disrupted and they cannot live their life how they want or need. Whoever they are and wherever they are in their life, they decided to trust us and put their care in our hands. In turn, the people seeking our care make our lives in physical therapy possible. Our role in health is at the heart of movement. The heart of movement, our core purpose, has both a what and how and a why. What and how are about optimizing movement. We must have excellent clinical abilities to diagnose and treat disorders of movement. Our excellence requires deep understanding across the systems of the human body and of the ecological system in which movement happens. For the what and how to have meaning, we must be clear about the why. The why asks, who are they? What is important to them? Life is a journey, and we carry things with us along the way. Evidence suggests that the things we carry come from social and environmental factors and drive about 50% of our health, and about 30% comes from health behaviors. Thus, the what and how of healthcare affects 20% of health. We must know what people are carrying when they walk into our clinic. What do they carry that lifts them up, that offers strength and resilience? What do they carry that weighs them down? What stressors weigh on their movement, health, and well-being? When I look around, I see too many people hurting, too many people carrying too much weight. It isn't like they overpacked for their vacation. They did not choose about half of what they carry. That half comes from their interactions with the environment and other people. While its source is external, it is internalized. While it is vitally important that we are excellent at the 20%, we must pay attention to the other 80% to optimize movement for every patient. If we do not, we run the risk of failing our patients and communities. I saw this all the time with patients with chronic pain that Peter Edgell and I saw in our clinic. I believe we need to come together to answer an important question about the why at the heart of movement. What is our individual and collective responsibility to improve the environmental and social drivers that affect movement of people in our communities? What's our responsibility to lighten the load of what people carry with them? When we ask what our collective responsibility is, we are asking how we balance APTA's purpose to advocate for us, the members of the profession, with advocacy for the people and communities we serve. While related, they are not the same. Spoiler alert, to the surprise of no one who knows me, I strongly believe we have an individual and collective responsibility to lessen the weight of the environmental and social drivers of health, and APTA's purpose is to advocate for us and for the communities we serve. However, we do not have consensus, causing indecision and confusion and creating obstacles to achieving our vision, transforming society to optimize movement to improve the human experience. I believe we need to come together to answer that question with a more unified voice as a profession, as the APTA. I believe we start with love. Here are the ingredients of love bell hooks offered and a way to think of them in our practice with each patient, with our colleagues, and with our communities. Think you singular and you plural. Care. I reach out to you with kindness and an open heart as a fellow human, with the genuine intent to understand you and your needs. I collaborate with you to help meet your needs. You matter to me. Affection. I'm glad you're here and we are together. I like what we can do together. Recognition. I see your humanity, all of you. However you sit, stand, or roll in all your sizes, colors, and belief, I am present with you. Respect. You have inherent dignity and I honor you, as you are without judgment. There is no better than or worse than. Your journey in life has worth. Commitment. I am here for you. I promise I will give you my best because you deserve nothing less, and we are all in this together. Trust. I am grateful that you chose to put your care in my hands and allow me to be your partner in care. I will put your needs above my own. Honest and open communication. What we say and how we say it and how we interact matters. I will create a safe space for you, for us to communicate and learn together. When our communication is imperfect, and it will be because we are human, I will work to make it better. I hope these ingredients feel familiar. They're close to our core values, except maybe affection. But then I thought, I really like my work and the people I work with, so yeah, affection. It wasn't until I read bell hooks that I connected our core purpose, the heart of movement, to love. And I want to be clear here. It does not require anything from the person we are caring for other than for them to be themselves. We have to recognize the impact of the things they carry. Leah Lakshmi Pepsna Samarasena said it this way. She describes themselves as a queer disabled femme writer and activist, and this is what she says. Many of us who are disabled are not particularly likable or popular in general or amid the able. Ableism means that we, with our panic attacks, our trauma, our triggers, our nagging need for fat seating or wheelchair access, our crankiness and inaccessibility, again, our staying home, are seen as pains in the ass, not particularly cool or sexy or interesting. Ableism and poverty and racism mean that many of us indeed are in bad moods. Psychic difference and neurodivergence all mean that we may be blunt, depressed, or hard to deal with by the tenets of an ableist world. I wish she were here to say that. I'm guessing most of us have a lot of learning and work to do on our ableism. I have 3 reasons why I believe we have a responsibility to reduce the weight of the drivers of health. The value of the gifts we receive in our professional journey, our evolving role in healthcare, and how the economic and social drivers of health impact the people we serve, our communities, and us. We have been given one of the most valuable gifts anyone can receive, the gift of being entrusted with someone's health when they can no longer move in the way they need to. Yes, we worked hard to become physical therapists and assistants, but we don't do it alone. Every one of us stands on the shoulders of the faculty, the researchers, the people who support our colleges and universities, the people who hire us, our coworkers, and the APTA. Friends, family, and neighbors support us and make our lives possible. We stand on the shoulders of physical therapists over a 100-year history. What is our responsibility given our reliance on so many other people? You might answer with excellent physical therapy for each patient. I would answer that's the basic premise of professional education. I believe our professional responsibility extends further than that. We say it does when we say transform society to improve the human experience. Which brings me to the second reason I believe we have a responsibility to reduce the weight of the drivers of health. Our role in healthcare has changed dramatically over our 100 years of existence, and it continues to evolve to meet the health needs of society. Primary care is one of the areas where we have an increasing role because of how central movement is for healthy people and for our communities. Our profession's position on primary care drives our advocacy at federal and state levels. The Primary Care Special Interest Group of the APTA Federal Section is considering a framework for physical therapists' role in primary care at this meeting. There are 7 sessions, 7 platforms, and 18 posters that have something to do with primary care at CSM. In 2016, the Patient-Centered Primary Care Collaborative and Family Medicine for America's Health brought together multiple stakeholders to review and redefine the principles of primary care, including the realization that primary care was not always physician-directed. They arrived at 7 principles: person and family-centered, continuous, comprehensive and equitable, team-based and collaborative, coordinated and integrated, accessible, high value. I want to point to number 3. The APTA defines equity as equity goes beyond equality, equal treatment of all people, to include the elimination of barriers and upliftment of marginalized groups, producing truly fair treatment, access, and opportunity for all people. Because primary care serves everyone, the authors concluded that comprehensiveness was linked to achieving health equity. They emphasized that primary care practitioners must recognize the effect of environmental and social drivers of health on people, connect them with community resources for assistance, and to collaborate with community-based organizations to improve population health and equity. As practitioners who serve everyone, then we ought to act on these values via interprofessional collaborative practice in primary care. There are other national efforts to promote health equity. The triple aim was first introduced in 2008 by Donald Berwick at the Institute for Healthcare Improvement to improve population health, enhance the experience of care, and reduce the cost of care. In 2018, the triple aim became the quadruple aim with the addition of healthcare practitioner well-being to reduce burnout and moral injury. In 2022, Nundy, Cooper, and Mate made the case that there's an imperative for a quintuple aim for healthcare improvement that adds health equity to healthcare system improvement. We can be part of efforts to improve the system. Which brings me to the third reason I believe we have a responsibility to reduce the weight of the drivers of health. Healthy People 2030 defines health disparities as a particular type of health difference that is closely linked with economic, social, or environmental disadvantage. They are caused by deep-seated environmental and social factors with root causes in the systems and structures that create and sustain them. In her 31st Mary McMillan lecture 25 years ago, Ruth Pertillo talked about a new season in physical therapy amidst a seriously shifting social landscape. How little they knew about a shifting social landscape in 2000. She called this new season Physical Therapy's Period of Societal Identity, in which our task will be to establish the moral foundations for a true professional partnering with a larger community of citizens and institutions. That task continues today. 9 years later, the House adopted our current Code of Ethics for the physical therapist and standards of conduct for the physical therapist assistant that includes these principles. I'm going to pause a minute so you can read those. Last summer, Our colleagues, Drs. Rosalia Ariano, Gail Bachman, and Oscar Gallardo, presented the California chapter's ethics forum. Their presentation gave many examples of how physical therapists are fulfilling their ethical duties in their communities. There were 142 attendees. During the webinar, they did some polls. They asked, are we meeting our ethical obligations to economically disadvantaged, uninsured, and underinsured populations? 16% said yes. Do physical therapy practice models support our ethical obligations to provide care to economically disadvantaged, uninsured, and underinsured populations? 18% said yes. 74% of the participants said they were providing pro bono services. This is super. Principle 8B is our profession's answer to the question I posed. However, we do not all see our responsibilities to Principle 8B similarly, and the principle does not address our responsibility to reduce the impact of health disparities with patients, nor does it call for action beyond advocacy. We need to strengthen our commitment to pro bono services for people in need in Principle 8A. By definition, health disparities are based on factors people do not control at all. For example, gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and disability. Factors they have little control over, for example, economic or environmental disadvantage. Economic, because the US has the least opportunity for upward social mobility among developed countries. There are structures and systems that limit upward socioeconomic mobility, adding weight to the things people carry. The environmental and social drivers of health do not just randomly appear in the environment to disproportionately affect some people more than others. Dr. Kamara Phyllis Jones uses the cliff of good health as a metaphor to describe the drivers of health. Prevention is a fence at the edge of the cliff, but it is not foolproof. There are weak spots or gaps in what prevention can do. Healthcare is what fixes us when we have a non-fatal fall off the cliff. Our work environments, adequate pay, hazard exposure, physical demands of work, physical environment, air quality, housing, water quality, social environment, the social environment, cohesion, belonging, safety, and service environment, education, healthcare, social services, and healthy food can keep us a safe distance from the cliff. But when those factors are weak, they form a hand that pushes people inexorably towards the edge of the cliff, and they are more likely to fall off. Here's an example from Oakland, California, where I live, about those structural and systemic forces that impact health. After World War II, Oakland was a major destination for Black people during the Great Migration out of the South. Redlining forced Black residents into lower-cost housing along the corridor next to the bay, in yellow and marked East and West Oakland on this map, where there was more heavy industry, including shipyards and oil refineries, resulting in poor air and soil quality. Then, a highway, later becoming I-880, went through the middle of the Black community, and with it, much more car and truck traffic, worsening air quality, and disrupted Black neighborhoods. In the 1980s, they built a new freeway along the hills through predominantly white neighborhoods, but prohibited trucks from using that freeway, preventing a more even distribution of the higher polluting, noisier traffic. Life expectancy, incidence of childhood asthma, heart disease are all worse along that corridor where Interstate 80 runs than in the hills. This is still going on. Think Flint, Michigan, and in towns all over the United States have similar histories. In physical therapy, this scoping review by our colleagues, Drs. Patel, Przynski, Williams-York, Matthews, and Van Hoos, reported disparities beyond race and ethnicity for all people from marginalized racial and ethnic groups compared to white people. There are also disparities in physical therapy based on sex, income, sexual orientation, and people who are transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary. But there is not a robust body of evidence on health disparities in physical therapy. There is one health disparity that disproportionately affects older white men. They are disproportionately likely to die by suicide using a firearm. Suicide accounts for about 60% of all firearm deaths. In my worldview, children deserve special consideration when talking about health disparities. Infant and maternal mortality in the US is the highest among 12 similar countries. When you look at infant mortality in the US by race and ethnicity, you see disparities here as well. There are also disparities by race and maternal mortality, including when you control for socioeconomic status and education. The leading cause of death among children in the US is firearm violence. And the number of deaths by firearm violence has doubled since 2013. This is absolutely the worst health data imaginable. If you couple this with the data on suicide deaths from firearms, routine screening for household gun safety for all patients, and screening for depression ought to be a standard of care in our profession. This memorial statue at Oakland's Lake Merritt commemorates children who lost their lives due to violence since 2001. Adverse childhood events, ACEs, concerns the immediate and long-term effects childhood experiences have on health. ACEs include exposure to physical abuse in childhood, household violence or substance abuse, incarceration of household members, and parental separation or divorce. Exposure to ACEs in childhood has a proportional relationship to poor health outcomes in adults, including substance abuse, suicidality, mental health, heart disease, and diabetes. In the latest national data, 24% of adults in the United States were exposed to 2 or more ACEs. Given what we know about intergenerational trauma and epigenetics, the number of children who are exposed to them is sobering and cause for action. We saw widespread health disparities with the COVID-19 pandemic. The people most affected by COVID were the elderly, especially in care homes, people with disabilities, people of color, and people living in or near poverty. Because humans are pushing the interface with nature and other animals, we are in an era where zoonotic diseases are more likely, as we are seeing with bird flu and mpox, with increased risk for pandemics. The inevitable infectious disease outbreaks will likely bring with it polarization over public health measures, such as vaccinations and masks. Alice Wong and other disabled activists make compelling arguments for the disproportionate impact laws that prohibit mask mandates and people who refuse to wear masks have on disabled people. These regulations and behaviors minimize their value as human beings and seriously threaten their health and life. As healthcare providers, we need to stand with the evidence and with the people we serve. The Bay Area Regional Health Inequities Initiative is a collaboration among public health offices in the San Francisco Bay Area. They use this public health framework as a means to address the drivers of health and reduce health disparities. While not perfect, it is one of the better frameworks I've seen. For example, I noticed disability is missing, which is a problem and would see the fit with social inequities upstream. Access is missing from living conditions. Our focus as healthcare providers is on disease and injury. If we screen for behaviors that influence disease and injury, we move a bit upstream. When we screen for the living conditions that affect health, we move further upstream. The question I posed earlier asked how far upstream our professional responsibility goes. In their article, A Cultural Shift for Excellence in Physical Therapy, Promoting Equity Through the Structural Determinants of Health, our colleagues, Drs. Carla Bell and Tiffany Adams, made a strong case for the importance of including these upstream systemic structural factors in education and practice. They asserted we must move beyond the social determinants of health and take a systems viewpoint that leads to action. They wrote, "The moral courage to act has never been more important to center health equity using a structurally competent approach and seek to identify and address social and structural barriers to health." I agree with their assertion, but not everybody in our profession does. I believe we need to reach consensus on our upstream responsibilities because of the implications. If we have an upstream responsibility, it means new standards of practice for screening on the drivers of health, establishing community relationships to connect patients to resources that meet their needs, recognizing they do not often exist in the way people need, promoting a research agenda that explores causes and remedies for health disparities in physical therapy, orienting our education programs to prepare physical therapists and assistants for their responsibilities, and having an advocacy portfolio that clearly includes the upstream drivers of health. The thing about consensus is we agree to work together for the common good, and we can live with our differences with respect. So those are the three reasons why I believe it is important for us to establish our responsibilities to reduce the impact of the structural and systematic drivers of health disparities, to fulfill our responsibilities to our communities based on the gifts we receive from them, to meet our evolving role in primary care, and to reduce the causes of the environmental and social drivers of health in physical therapy. Which brings me to how can we frame our work and get clarity for action on our greater purpose, because indecision is action. First, though, our knowledge in health system science is woefully inadequate for the world in which we practice. The environmental, social drivers of health are embedded in systems and structures in our society. Our practice, including payment, is embedded in a healthcare system, and ours is the most expensive in the world with the worst long-term outcomes, for example, as shown here, life expectancy at birth. Our education programs are embedded in systems. These systems are so complicated that when things go wrong or need to change, our tendency is to give up and feel like the system is rigged against us. And in my view, personally, the healthcare system is rigged against us and against the people who are most in need. For example, I was on a payment policy webinar that the California Physical Therapy Association sponsored last year. I heard the frustration of members have with payment from large private and governmental payers. I heard people who were not only frustrated, but adrift about what they could do. Many had converted to cash pay practices, and others were contemplating it, which makes sense when third-party payers are relentlessly reducing payments. Interestingly, from 2012 to 2022, the percent of physicians in private practice dropped from 60% to 47%. They joined large multi-specialty hospital and health system practices, and 80% of them said it was so they could negotiate better payment rates with payers. Every one of us, from the time we graduate, must have a thorough understanding of the health system, have a firm grasp on the leverage points, and know how, why, and when to exert leverage if we are to have any power in the system. The same is true in understanding and changing the systems and structures that are at the root causes driving health. The alternative to giving up is to get informed and get active. Medicine is leading the way by integrating health system science into medical school curricula and providing online learning resources and publications to support their students and practitioners. We need to get on board and quickly. The Academies of Leadership and Innovation and Education, the American Council of Academic Physical Therapy, and the APTA need to collaborate to set standards for health system science for professional and post-professional education and develop resources. Maybe just use the AMA to get everyone fluent. Our advocacy for our profession and patients will be the beneficiary. Now to answer the question I posed. Martin Luther King said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." At first, it sounds like all we need to do is wait, and justice will prevail. At a different time, though, he said, "We must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals who are willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally for the primitive forces of social stagnation. So we must help time and realize that time is always right to do right. The time is always right to move from disagreement and indecision to action." Justice is one of those concepts that different people interpret differently. I'm not talking about law and order or judges and attorneys and a jury deciding if someone is guilty or innocent. In biomedical ethics, we often talk about justice as the distribution of limited resources according to agreed upon standards of fairness. This idea of justice often evokes the metaphor of a fixed pie to be divided among people who have competing interests. If one group of people receive a larger slice of the pie, it means other groups receive a smaller slice, or maybe no pie at all. And no pie at all would be a very bad outcome if we were talking about my mother's boysenberry or lemon meringue pie. Physical therapists face distributive justice problems. Hospital physical therapy departments have weekend patient priority lists. Outpatient clinics have priority waiting lists when they have too many patients. There are policies to stop physical therapy for patients who decline services or fail to keep appointments. We try to reach fair solutions, but we are influenced by our assumptions and biases about who is more or less deserving of physical therapy. There's an alternative way to look at justice. 13 years ago, our colleagues Ian Edwards, Claire Delaney, Ann Townsend, and Dolly Swisher published 2 companion articles on justice in physical therapy, and I am definitely standing on their shoulders. Unfortunately, their excellent articles did not have the impact they deserved. I'm going to revisit them because we need them now more than ever. They are based on Amartya Sen's work, The Idea of Justice. Dr. Sen is an Indian philosopher who frames justice on an ancient Indian principle that focuses on people's capability, the actual choices every person has in their daily life, not on idealized forms of fairness, but on real choices. This non-idealized view of justice as capability means we seek ways for people to have the freedom to choose what is important to them. In the clinic, when we talk to patients to learn what is important to them in their daily lives and what their desired outcomes are, we are talking about their freedom to make choices. We are talking about justice. When we look at what's in the baggage people are carrying, we are asking about justice because it asks what is holding people down. We are asking, how can we make our world better for our neighbors than it is now? And by neighbors, I mean every person who lives in your town, county, state, country, and as Dr. Deutsch forcefully reminded us in her McMillan lecture last year, the world. A capability perspective also means that every person has a moral worth to receive the benefits of society. No one is less than, despite anyone's attempt to make them so. A capability view of justice establishes our obligations to our neighbors to ensure they have freedom to make real choices, just as we choose to become physical therapists and physical therapist assistants. These are individual obligations that each of us have and that all of us have that create our responsibility to act. Our profession's moral compass must have a stronger magnetic attraction to justice than it does now. Among the biomedical principles, beneficence, doing what is best for patients, is, as it should be, at the center of practice. We have a responsibility to provide excellent, effective physical therapy, but justice needs to play a larger role in our practice and profession, given the things people carry with them into the clinic. We need to link beneficence with justice to create a stronger true north on physical therapy's moral compass. How can we dismantle our own obstacles and move to consensus on the answer to the question, what is our individual and collective responsibility to improve the environmental and social drivers that affect movement of people and our communities? We do it the same way we do when we do not fully understand or agree with our patients' desired outcomes and how we will reach them. We talk with the goal of understanding and agreement. We need to talk. We need a national conversation in a public sphere. Think town halls where we establish a common understanding on health disparities and our role decreasing them, both in the clinic with patients and in our communities. Engagement in the public sphere is the foundation of democracy. However, we absolutely cannot have the type of town hall shouting matches that populate social media. Our town halls need to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive. I use that phrase intentionally because I detest how it is being distilled to DEI. It's meaning distorted. It's meaning distorted and used as a cudgel by powerful people to retain their power and silence people whose voices need to be heard. I will acknowledge there might be people here who disagree with me. I will use opposites to illustrate why they are important for us to achieve consensus. The opposite of diversity is uniformity, blandness. I have never read a study on organizational effectiveness, team effectiveness, leadership, or innovation where any outcomes are better with uniformity and blandness than with diversity. In fact, the opposite is true. Diversity yields better outcomes. Sen wrote, Democracy has to be judged not just by the institutions that formally exist, but by the extent to which different voices from diverse sections of the people can actually be heard. The opposite of equitable is unjust or unfair. The system is rigged. Equity is linked to justice. Sen wrote, "When people ask for a more just society, they are not arguing for a perfectly just society, but rather for reducing the most outrageous, most obvious injustices that exist. The opposite of inclusive is exclusive or intolerant, putting up walls." Sen wrote, "Everyone is morally and politically relevant. The universality of inclusion is an integral part of impartiality. To safeguard the liberties of all, we have to cultivate tolerance of each other in our respective values. We must be intentional to ensure we have diverse voices, particularly voices who are often absent from our discussions, and be sure they are heard. Given who is affected by health disparities, it is imperative that we at least invite disabled people, other health professionals, and community leaders to join us in the conversation and hope that they are willing to participate. We need to have clear expectations about the outcomes from our town halls. We should not expect an ideal solution. Whatever we do will not be enough, but it will be something. While it is hard and complicated, we have accomplished harder, more complicated tasks, but perhaps not in a more complicated environment. We can get to consensus on priorities for action, even in the face of a plurality of opinions. We agree to go as far as we can. We face at least one structural challenge to town halls. Unfortunately, the APTA does not have a national meeting in which we come together as a united profession. You might be scratching your head. While CSM is a valuable meeting, it is a meeting run by the academies, each setting their own program, and there's a lot going on. However, given this is the biggest national meeting of the profession, I suggest some remodeling is in order. The academies and the APTA need to come together to create ways for us to come together and engage about our core purpose and our role in achieving our vision. We need town halls with interaction, not talking heads. Other groups have some examples we could emulate. We can use regional and chapter meetings and the annual leadership meeting, even though they are somewhat fragmented. We can hold virtual town halls to bring people together. Given our ability to communicate is imperfect, again, to say the least, online communication through existing social media channels is not the way to go. Tonight I asked what love has to do with it. Has to do with the heart of movement, the why of our profession. To truly know the people we serve by learning what are the things they carry that weigh them down and lift them up. I asked a question that I believe we must answer. What is our individual and collective responsibility to improve the environmental and social drivers that affect movement of people in our communities? How can we lighten their load? We have 3 reasons why we ought to do this: to fulfill our responsibilities to our communities based on the gifts we receive, to meet our evolving role in primary care, and to reduce the causes of the environmental and social drivers of health and physical therapy. We can build a foundation for this work on justice as a strong force in our moral compass, so people have the freedom to make choices that matter to them in their lives. We have a way to do this with town halls that are diverse, equitable, and inclusive. My ask is for us to make a collective decision to come together and answer a big question. I would love to see the board and house with the chapters and academies make a shared decision to bring us together to decide what is at the heart of movement. May we ground our work in love, in a love ethic in which we bring all the ingredients: care, affection, recognition, respect, commitment, and trust, characterized by honest and open communication. May we care for each other and care for what we do. May we all link arms together, even though we may disagree. May we look each other in the eye and say, I love that you are here. I love that you care. I love that you are involved and make a difference. I love you. Thank you. you're here. I didn't see you come on board.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.